You're listening to 8158 Stories of Sacrifice, where we honor the bravery of the first responders and the families who stand behind them. Real people, real stories, real heroes. This is 8158.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of 8158 Podcast Stories of Sacrifice. Today's guest, we have Michael, and he is in EMS, and he has a wealth of experience in EMS for a number of years. So you are talking to a very professional individual who knows his stuff. How's it going, Michael?
It's going good. Thank you, Rico, for having me on. I truly appreciate the opportunity.
You're very welcome. I just wanted, how did you get in contact with us? How did you find us? Just out of curiosity.
Being still in my infancy stage at TikTok, over the past, I would say 6 years, I have gone towards the movement of mental health and first responders, all first responders, law enforcement, fire, EMS, emergency room personnel, dispatchers, corrections, military, and the people who sometimes get left out a lot is the coroner personnel as well. I've started talking about their mental health, and if I would have known when I first started out over 30 years ago in EMS to what I know today and the effects of the cumulative trauma that we go through and all the other effects that it has, I would have probably done a few things a little bit different.
Right. So you found us on TikTok and then you reached out to us. Did I reach out to you before, or did
You actually, I think you've seen one of my videos that I posted, or it could have been a interview I did with Nurse Andrea.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you reached out to me shortly after that. And because of the way things happen, we just got reconnected and here we are.
Yeah. I know Nurse Andrea. We met up with her in Wilmington.
Oh, so you went?
Yes, we were there.
I was, you know what, she had, because she lives here in Las Vegas as well. And she told me about it when it was in its planning stages. And unfortunately, because of my schedule, I was unable to attend. And I have heard nothing but phenomenal things. And, you know, hats off to Pierce Provisions and Paramedic AF for putting this thing on, because I heard it was a great summit.
Yes, it was. It was very good. It was the first time that our podcast was actually at a mental health awareness summit, and it was amazing. It was great.
You know, and that's and one of the great things, I posted a shout out to them, I think the day before that it was supposed to take place. I think I posted on a Wednesday. It's like, we need more of these mental health summits to help crush the stigma and help normalize the conversation when it comes to our mental health, our mental fitness, and our mental well-being, because we're losing too many good men and women to addiction, depression. I hope I can say this word on your podcast, suicide.
Feel free.
And that's my big why on why I go around and speak to different agencies, because once we start normalizing the conversation, if we talk about the things that we run from, we're more apt to normalize the conversation. People will be more apt to come out and talk about it.
Exactly. And that's kind of like along the lines of what we're trying to do with the podcast, is break the stigma of, you know, just a little bit about the podcast. I know that I tell it to everybody who comes on here, is we initially started it on just making it to be like an awareness thing for first responders, like the people, they have families, you know, and honor my cousin. And we just wanted people to know that, you know, first responders are people, law enforcement, whether EMS, fire, coroners, corrections officers, dispatch, all that, they're people and they deal with problems. But it was mostly on my cousin. And we quickly realized, with listening to a lot of the interviews, that there was a huge issue with the mental health aspect of it. And then it hit me that my cousin wouldn't want us to dwell on him, but he would want us to focus on his brothers and sisters in
Right.
the first responder world, especially since he was a 20-year combat veteran. He
Right.
did three deployments in Iraq, and then for 20 years he retired out of the army for 20 years, and then he was a 13-year veteran with the sheriff's office. So uh, he would want us to focus on that and help our first responders break the stigma. I'm not a first responder or veteran myself. I am just like a supporter and maybe a conduit to help as much as I can. My wife and I, that's what we do. And that's what we set up our foundation as a way to help our first responders get mental health help, awareness, and also, the families of the fallen and all that stuff. So
Your advocacy for what you're doing needs to be applauded, and there needs to be more people out there, such as yourself, that because I don't have the platform that you do. I
mhm,
don't have, you know what I mean? So everybody plays a part in normalizing the conversation and breaking the stigma, crushing the stigma on this. And you brought up a really good point. Because once you hit on certain points, my mind, my first responder mind just goes ding, 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 and then I'll forget what I want to say. But you brought up the the humanity part of first responders, and so many times I have seen it over the past 30 years is that, there's a time to be strong and to be brave and everything else. There's no doubt about that. But you have to know when to, and it's really hard because we get into the neuroplasticity that we become trained to think a certain way. And that could be a whole nother podcast because I'll just go off on a tangent. But the thing is that what I wish I would have learned early on was a better way to separate the two between my personal life and my professional life. But that's becomes very difficult because what makes us so great at our jobs is the ability to detach. Because when we have a task to do when we're on the job, we just focus on that task. We think 3 or 4 steps ahead to keep that's self preservation, to keep ourselves safe and the people that we're serving safe. But there comes a point too everybody thinks that they have to carry that identity home with them, and they don't. Because after a 12-hour shift, a 24-hour shift, a 48-hour shift, when you take that uniform, your scrubs, whatever uniform you wear, when you take that off, you have to realize too, you have to give yourself this grace that underneath that uniform, you're just a human being, that does such a, a great job that a lot of people can't do and don't want to do. So we have to keep that in the back of our minds and give back to ourselves what we give to others.
exactly. Because you guys are putting yourselves out there to do a job that a lot of people can't do,
Hmm.
don't want to do, and probably don't care to do,
Yeah.
right? So here you are putting yourselves out there for people you don't know that probably don't even care,
Yeah.
and you're sacrificing yourselves, your mental health, your physical health, and everything else that goes along with it to people that you just don't know.
I think a lot of times the general public, and really to no fault of their own, but we have the stereotypical police officer, firefighter, EMS, dispatcher. They just see the uniform. They see that someone's coming to help them on their worst day. They
Mhm.
don't take into consideration that the things that we see, that we experience, that we take in goes home with us as well, and it's now
Right.
part of us. And I think that, not that I'm looking for or we look for any credit or anything else, but at the end of the day, we're just as human as the people that we serve.
Oh, absolutely. You have thoughts, feelings, you have families, you have your emotional state and obviously your mental state as well.
Yeah.
And the things you see on the job, it just doesn't go away.
No.
It
No.
sticks with you forever.
No. Yep. And the difference that I've learned through a lot of therapy and everything else due to the things that I've experienced, I tell my story for a specific purpose. But what I've learned too, going through this career, is you really need to give back to yourself and you really need to have that balance, because if we don't have that balance, then we tip too far forward or too far backwards and start tipping that scale. And, our lives depend on it, I mean, is evident as, a lot of the brothers and sisters that we've lost.
Right. So, how far along in your career did you realize that there was an issue with the mental health aspect of the job that you were doing?
Perfect segue. It would be 11. It would be 11 years. When I first started out, I came from the Johnny and Roy days of emergency, or Squad 51. And it was like, as a child, it was very, impressionable to me. It's like, that's what I want to do. I want to go save others. And so, through a long track of testing and everything else, I finally got hired. But when I went through school, when I went through my first EMT class, they never really talked about the mental health aspect of it. So I continued to test. I got hired with Mercy Ambulance in 1991. And then fast forward a little bit, 1998, I wanted to do something still within the same realm of EMS and first responder work, but I wanted a challenge for myself. And so our local flight program was hiring flight paramedics. So I tested for them and got hired. And this was probably in February of 98. So I'd work 2 or 3 shifts a month and I was having a blast. It was like, you didn't have to worry about traffic, you just fly and it was a great experience. And then on April 3rd, 1999, one of our helicopters, we had 2 helicopters in Vegas at the time, one that served Las Vegas and the other that served Pahrump, which is just west of Las Vegas. Lifeguard 2 was lifting off. They were going back to base in Pahrump, and they would, their typical flight route that they would go, they couldn't go that way because of a storm that had come in. So they had to go around the northern route, and he checked his radar, everything else. It appeared to be clear. He takes off. He hits his first 10-minute check-in, and then he flies into a cloud bank, quickly develops spatial disorientation, and makes 3 or 4 passes, back to the main highway. And we're thinking that NTSB and FAA is thinking he was looking for the lights of the cars to guide him out. Well, on his 4th pass, he went into the ground doing about 140 miles an hour, and we were a very small flight program, so they just weren't coworkers. They were family members. And so we lost 3 family members that night: Kathy Battleman, Leroy Shelton, and James Bond Jr. And just like we were taught when we first started out, we just stuff all that stuff down. Well, I don't care who you are, everybody has an emotional suitcase and everybody has their limit of what they can handle. So just kept stuffing it down because we don't want the general public to see that we're hurting, because then they may lose confidence in us and our abilities, which is absolutely not true. It's just a lie that the stigma tells us. So I wasn't afraid to fly anymore. I actually still wanted to continue to fly. And so I tested with another flight program that had just come in, Mercy Air. I got hired with them towards the end of 2001, beginning of 2002, and was having a great time flying with them, developing relationships and just having a good time too. And then on September 7th, 2002, it happened all over again. So we had a helicopter leaving Pahrump going to Baker, California on a multi-fatality accident, critical injuries, and then they were at about 7,000 feet, had a catastrophic rotor failure, and once again, we lost 3 family members in that aircraft accident. Kalea Jarbansanthi, which I started my career with, Anna Coburn, and Marshall Butler. Then after that had happened, it was probably, I was 11 years in, and, we would, after shifts, when I started at the ambulance company, we would have 1 or 2 beers to kind of debrief and everything else and just kind of blow off some steam. Well, now, because of all the stuff that I had stuffed down into that emotional suitcase I was telling you about, and with these 2 aircraft accidents that took 6 of my coworkers, I'd lost the resiliency to handle my thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So I started drinking to excess 4 to 5 nights a week. And then eventually alcohol wasn't enough for me, so I had to resort to other things. It was because of the lethal emotional pain that I was going through mentally because I wasn't taught how to ask for help, that asking for help was okay, and that, taking care of yourself is paramount. No one ever taught me that early in my career. It was ingrained in us that we had to be the strong ones. We had to be the ones that, weathered through anything. And once again, two things can be true at the same time. Yes, we do have to be brave, but we also have to take care of ourselves as well. So this insanity went on for about 4 years. And during that 4 years, I wish two things would have happened. I wish one, I would have either drank myself to death, or two, I would have overdosed. And the really sad part about that statement is I didn't want to die. I just wanted this pain to stop. So, on through a series of events on January 2006, had a little visit from our local police department here, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And I'd been up for 3 days, and they opened the door and they knew exactly what they were dealing with. And so through us talking and everything else, they looked at me and they said, from everything that we have here, we could take you to jail very easily. Being under the influence, just number one. The police officer, I remember to this day, said, "Mike, you don't need jail, you need help." And so just by that peer support component right there, if someone saw enough in me, I could at least see that enough in myself. So I was in rehab that following Friday. I've been clean ever since, and haven't had drink or anything else for that matter. But putting all that stuff down, because that's just a Band-Aid on a much bigger injury, a mental injury.
Yeah.
The other part of it was being able to get vulnerable enough with somebody, to tell them what I was going through without fear of judgment, without fear of, belittlement or anything like that. And so I feel fortunate that I went through the path that I went through and that I came out through the other side, because there's a lot of men and women that I've known personally and that you hear of that don't make it out through the other side. So that is my why. How come I started talking to the younger generation of first responders to help have that cultural change that, what, when you find yourself in trouble, don't deny it. Because if you don't deal with your thoughts, feelings, and emotions, your thoughts, feelings, and emotions will eventually deal with you. Sorry for that long-winded story, but
No.
that's the reason that that is my why. How come I do what I do now?
I'm glad you shared that with us, because we know that there are a lot of people that can relate to that are probably going through a similar thing that you're going through. Uh, it's I've heard that before from other first responders that they didn't want to die; they just wanted the pain to stop. Obviously, there's a lot of mental anguish going on. There's something going on inside of you that just wants it to stop. But it's not like you want to just go Harry Carry and kill yourself. That's not
Right.
the issue. Right. The issue is you just want the pain to stop.
Yep. And I think when we talk about resilience, when we first start out in our career, our resilience shield is like this, right? But after time, our resilience shield gets thinner and thinner and thinner. And everything that we carry with us, that we take home with us, that we don't appropriately process, it gets exhausting to carry that mental weight for so long. And there comes a point to where you can get help and put it down, or
Okay.
keep carrying it to the very end. And
And
you don't have to
you
carry
don't
that.
have to carry that.
And you don't have to carry the things that you're experiencing alone either. And that's a big thing, because people, I'll speak for myself. I thought I was the only one that that felt this way, and I felt that I was having some type of moral dilemma. I thought I was weak. I thought I was, and that is absolutely not the truth. Because if you go back and look at everything that we go through as first responders, it's a pretty enormous burden. It really is. It's a pretty enormous weight that we carry, and you don't have to carry it alone.
Exactly. There's others out there that can help you.
Hmm.
That's kind of like one of the things that we're trying to do is we not only have, had interviewed and spoken with other first responders for peer support. We've also spoke with psychiatrists, therapists who are trauma informed, and other organizations that offer help for free to first responders. If a first responder wants to reach out, they can reach out, and they're free of charge. One was Dan with healingthehero.org. The other one is QRF, Quick Reaction Force Up. So Quick Reaction Force actually has an app for first responders, and they have therapists pretty much all over the country that can do telehealth. And if there's really a problem, they could send an ambulance or police and advise them of the situation and what's going on.
I would love to get that information from you after we're done here.
Okay. Yeah. We also talk to other psychiatrists, or not psychiatrists, psychologists. She would be mad at me if I said that. She's a psychologist. She's from
You
California.
just gave her extra 4 years of schooling just like that. So
Yeah.
she can't be too mad.
Yeah. Yeah. Her husband is a lieutenant in the Cal Fire. So she's definitely trauma informed. Family was in the military, and she knows. I mean, that's kind of what we do. We build connections with people who have experience in dealing with that situation, so that when we do talk with first responders, we can offer them an outlet.
Her name wouldn't be Minda, would it, by chance?
No,
Okay.
can't
All right.
remember what her name was. I'd have to ask my wife. She handles all that stuff. I got so many names in my head. It's not
I
even
hear you.
funny.
In our it seems like our RAM drive, as we get older, our RAM drive kind of shrinks and it goes from 256 to 128. I get it. Yep.
I think mine's running a little slow.
It's all right. I'm right there
I
with
think
you.
I'm outdated. So let's talk about your career in EMS, all the things that you've done, starting out from the beginning all the way up to what you're doing now.
We will return after this quick ad break.
The William H. Bill Butler Jr. Foundation is on a mission to honor first responders and support those who serve. We provide scholarships for families who have lost a hero in the line of duty, offer second chances to juvenile offenders who are working to rebuild their future, and help new recruits pursuing careers as first responders. Through generous donations and the sale of merchandise, we're building a community that uplifts, empowers, and creates lasting impact. You can be a part of this mission as well. Visit 8158podcast.com to donate or shop today. Together, we can support those who serve, honor those we've lost, and give hope to those who need it most. Behind every badge is a story, and behind every story is a sacrifice. This is the 8158 podcast, where we honor the lives and legacies of first responders and their families. If our mission speaks to your heart, if these stories move you like they move us, join us on Patreon. For just $5 a month, you'll get ad-free listening, exclusive merchandise, behind-the-scenes content, and video episodes only available to our patrons. This isn't just a podcast, it's a movement, and you can be a part of it. Support us at patreon.com/8158podcast. Let's continue to share the stories that deserve to be heard.
Okay. So after my college football career didn't take off at Weber State University because it was way too cold up there. I came back. I was a bartender for a little while. And then it was like, okay, am I going to do this the rest of my life and be married and raise kids and everything else? And it's like, I really need a career because that Johnny and Roy episode, I really wanted to, pop the things off the pre-filled syringes, and look really cool. So I started testing for the fire department. I had this one battalion chief tell me, Mr. Worthen, you probably won't get hired because you have no EMT experience. And I said, okay, all right. So instead of having a bad attitude about it. I took it as constructive criticism, enrolled in my first EMT class at Mercy Ambulance in '89, and fell in love with the medicine, fell in love with everything that I was being taught, because everything that was being taught was everything that I was, seeing on TV. So I ate it up. So I continued on to my intermediate class, which is EMT Advanced now, and then got subsequently hired by Mercy Ambulance in 1991. Worked with them until 1998. I got hired with where I'm currently at now, the Nevada National Security Site Fire and Rescue. And then in the same year was when I got hired with my first flight program. While at the fire department, I spent probably the next 8 to 10 years in the training division, teaching classes, staying up to date on things. And then I recently in 2012, in the capacity that I currently serve as, is a EMS division chief out there. And over the past 6 years, I've kind of touched on it a little bit, is that, you always want to leave your career a little bit better than when you found it. And what can I contribute to a career that has been good to me and kind of and not have it's bright side, but it's downside too. But what can I contribute to this career that's has given me so much satisfaction and has given me so much passion for what I do. So I decided to write an article in 2020, I believe. It was EMS World Better Ways to Cope. And I go through my story that I shared here today, and that, we really need to, do better with our first responders on taking care of ourselves. So after that article came out, I approached a friend of mine who is the CEO of Community Ambulance out here in Las Vegas. And I said, hey, here's an article I wrote. I would like your insight on this, and tell me what you think. So he read it, and he had you could tell it hit him because he was going through the same stuff. And he goes, how about you do this? He goes, I think your article is very well written. He didn't know it took like about 10 to 15 drafts, but it finally got where I wanted it to be. He goes, why don't you do this? I would love for you to come in and teach or lecture this type of material to all our new hires. And I said, I would love to, because, any way that we can be a part of normalizing the conversation, this is just our part, right? That we can give back to them. So I started doing that, and that led into speaking at different facilities, universities, colleges. And I was actually fortunate and blessed enough to have the opportunity to be a keynote speaker at Nevada Coalition for Suicide Prevention, I think in 2021. So it's kind of taken off for that. Any way that we can get the message out there, because we need more of us to tell our stories, because that'll give more people out there feel like they're not so alone.
You definitely have a wealth of knowledge that can help, especially
Yeah.
the new recruits and the ones that are coming on, or even having peer support for those who are suffering and don't want to talk.
Yep. And I think that's the key, because our resources, we're getting more and more resources for trauma-informed therapists.
Mhm.
But the key now is to get people that are unwilling, not to a fault of their own, but because that's just the way they're feeling. We need more people to actually come out and get a little bit more vulnerable. And that's a very scary and a very hard thing to do. It really is. Because what I've noticed, especially in my case, that healing doesn't begin until the vulnerability sets in. Because the more time you share your story, the more empowered you are. Because the more we talk about something, the more power we take out of it. And I give you the example of the stigma. We're so afraid of the stigma that, we don't ask for help because people will think we're weak. We don't want to be a burden. We don't want to, have management look at us cross-eyed, and we don't want our peers saying, well, maybe if you're feeling this way, you shouldn't be in this profession, which those are all lies that we tell ourselves, that the stigma will tell us. And so that's what keeps a lot of us from asking for help.
Right. I know I spoke with, 2 police officers, one in Wisconsin who is now a police captain, and one in, California. I don't know if you heard of Michael Segru? He wrote
That
the book
sounds familiar. That sounds familiar.
Zay Courage. Yeah, he had an incident where he he was really messed up over it, and he actually lost his job
Mm.
because of the mental health aspect of it. But he came through. I mean, he's no longer a police officer. However, he did write a few books, and he is a great, great guy to talk to. The other one, Captain Adam Myers, he also had a traumatic incident happen to where he had to shoot a suspect with a knife in a Walmart. And I listened to the 911 call to that. He let us listen to that. And it was sad because he had no other choice. He had no other choice. And it really messed him up. And he went through a lot of the same things that you went through and, the suicidal ideations and everything else. And he lost his job. But fortunately, he found a department that was supportive enough to where they were going to help him, actually rose through the ranks and is now a police captain in the department, which is awesome. I think it's awesome. So I wish there were more departments that would not look cross-eyed to you for looking.
And one thing, and you bring up a very valid point. The one thing that I always speak out about is that it starts from the top. Because if people know that they have the support of their admin, their chiefs, however your department or organization is structured, if they know they have that support, it can even go as high up as like your city council or county commission. Is we need that support, because if we have that support, I could almost guarantee you'll see more people come out and ask for the help that they so desperately need. Police officers, I'm obviously not in law enforcement, but the things that I've seen is that um, a lot of reasons that they don't go ask for help because that's their career, because they're afraid that their gun, their badge will be taken from them. Hats off to Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. They have their own PEEP program to where their officers can go seek help, police employee assistance program. But you are absolutely 100% correct. It starts at the top because we need to be given that reassurance that we're not going to be looked at cross-eyed. Our careers are going to continue, but they see you as a person that you are.
Mhm.
They see you as the human being that you are and that you need help, because you're a lot more than the uniform that you wear or the badge that you carry.
Exactly. You're exactly right about that. It's kind of crazy that, we always say it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to not be okay and not do anything about it.
Right. 100%.
And, we wish that there was more advocacy within the departments for the individuals that are in the law enforcement or within the EMS fields or fire departments to get that kind of help.
And I think you had mentioned previously that trauma-informed therapists are so much needed right now for the first responder culture,
Mhm.
because it was back in the day, and a lot of reason. And here's another reasons that keep first responders for asking for help too, is that maybe all they have in their city or their town is an EAP, or if anything at all. And EAPs, when I was going through my little 4 years of insanity, I was about halfway through. I had a brief moment of clarity and finally picked up the phone and called the EAP that was contracted through our company. And I say this not to be disrespectful, not to be belittling or anything like that. But back then, and still pretty much today, and we've gotten a lot better with our EAPs. I love our mental health professionals. They do a lot of great work for a lot of people. But when it's dealing with first responders, here's our train of thought. I called. There's three reasons that sometimes EAPs don't work out for us: accessibility, relatability, and identifiability. The
Right.
accessibility, when I called, she says, the lady on the phone said, "Oh, I'm so glad you called, Mr. Worthen. I understand that you're dealing with some addiction issues. You're dealing with, some mental health issues. Let me see who I can get for you." So she puts me on hold for about 10, 15 minutes. She comes back and she goes, "Mr. Worthen, I got some great news for you. I found someone that is going to be great for you and everything else." And she has availability in about 3 to 4 weeks.
Oh my God, that's
I can, as
great.
a first responder, what I've experienced, by the time a first responder asked for help, they needed it yesterday, because when they call, they're right on that ledge and they need help now. They don't need help 3 weeks from now, because I can tell you what's going to happen in 3 weeks. One, I won't be here anymore. Or
Mhm.
two, because we have such a chameleon thing and a deniability type of process to the way we think sometimes, is that the day before the appointment will come and it's like, I'll just tell myself, "Oh, you know what? I was just having a bad day. I'm good." How many times have we heard that? "I'm good."
Yeah.
So I was just going through a phase that day. So you'll cancel your appointment. We need to take advantage of the situation when the situation presents itself now. And that's where we can do better. The identifiability and relatability issue, when I did finally go talk to somebody, I'm sitting across, and I was actually proud of myself because I kept my inside voice. And I'm talking with this therapist, and she was either LMFT or LCSW, because we don't trust a lot, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
unless you've experienced what we've experienced, then how can you help me? It's like, I'm thinking to myself, have you ever, has a young mother ever rushed up to you and handed you their lifeless baby and said, "Save my baby"? No, you haven't. Have you ever had to do a body recovery of a family of 4 that was hit by a drunk driver and you're pulling out, the remains of this family? No, you haven't. So our minds go to the point, if you haven't dealt with what we've dealt with, then how can you appropriately help us? But now had an influx of trauma informed therapists that's really helping us, but we need a lot more of them.
Especially ones that can relate, because I know we have interviewed quite a few first responders who left the first responder uh, job to become therapists,
Yes.
psychologists. And one of them we met at the conference, and she was a dispatcher. And she had a very traumatic incident where a young man took his life when she was on the phone with him. So that was kind of like her tipping point, and she had to do something about that, because she reached out for help because she was having a traumatic situation happen within herself, and she wasn't getting the help that she needed. So she had to seek help excuse me. She had to seek help in other places, and then decided for herself that it would be good for her to become a therapist, trauma informed, and that knows the job, knows what they're going through. Because she actually had lost. No, that would be the other one. We had another dispatcher that is a therapist who lost a deputy in Sacramento. So she was on the phone with him. It was yeah. We've interviewed quite a few that are
Who better to help you navigate through the waters or navigate through a path, however you want to analogize it? Who better to help you navigate through your difficulties when they've already taken the trip? They've
right.
already been down that road. They've had that experience. And that's what's so valuable for us, because I've heard stories of people going in, and talking to somebody that really had no clue what we dealt with. And I've had a friend of mine tell me that he had the therapist in tears by the time he left. You
Mhm.
know, it's really so invaluable to have those people who have actually done the job to help the ones that are still doing the job. One other thing I'd like to say, since we're on the topic of therapy and everything else, if you're a first responder out there and you do finally make an appointment, you do finally get hooked up with somebody and they're not for you, please don't get discouraged. Keep trying. Keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. It took me 6 or 7 people to go through for somebody that I finally clicked with. And here's the amazing thing to your point, Rico, is the therapist that I'm seeing now, guess where I found him?
Where'd you find him?
TikTok. He's done the job, and he goes, and you probably know him. It's Dennis Carradine. And if you haven't, I mean, he has a lot of great stuff. And the reason I reached out to him is because I've seen a lot of the stuff that he promoted and talked about when it comes to, everything from, A to Z when it comes to first responders. And it just clicked. It's like he gets me. And the thing is, and when we talk about peer support too, is I don't have to know you personally, but if I know you're on the job, I know you'll get me. And that's a probably 80% of the issue right there, is like, as first responders, when we're going through our stuff and we finally come out and talk, want to talk about stuff that we need to talk about, we just need to be heard and we need to be understood.
Right. You're exactly correct on that, because, how can you relate to somebody when you don't know anything about what they're going through? And Dan Jarvis, he is the one that runs healingthehero.org. He is also a combat veteran and a former sheriff's deputy. He started healingthehero.org to help with first responders. And I'll get you that information too.
Awesome.
Also, the guy from QRF, he is a former Marine. I don't think he was in law enforcement or anything like that, but he lost a lot of friends due to suicide. And that's why he started his organization to help veterans and first responders.
It's definitely, there's so many components to this too. We speak about, it's just not the incidences that we go through, but the journey that these incidences has taken us to, and how we try to protect ourselves, how we try to protect our families. We talk about identity, we talk about balance in our world, and first responders. Why do we tend to work so much? Why do we tend to work a lot of overtime? Why do we tend to? Because it's a distraction. Because when we go home off our shift and things get quiet, that's very uncomfortable for us. It's very uncomfortable for us. And we're used to being around chaos, and working a lot also takes our minds off the things that we don't want to think about. And how that becomes an issue when you get home is, say you had a really bad shift, really traumatic shift. You go home and now you're just quiet because you're still trying to process everything that you went through on that shift. And your wife comes in and sees that you're quote unquote in a mood, right? And she's thinking maybe it's something that she did, when in all reality, she didn't do anything to get you there. Right. And so the communication starts to break down. And then once the communication breaks down, is we all know, in a relationship, then everything else starts to deteriorate as well. And,
Right.
that could be a big reasons for the divorce rates in police officers and firefighters.
Right. The lack of understanding, the lack of communication, the spouse doesn't know what's going on in your head because you're not saying. A lot of responders don't want to put that burden onto their spouses.
Yes.
And, a lot of them feel like they have to deal with it themselves.
Yep. And there's a couple things in there that you said, and I'll try to get my RAM to remember both of them. Is that when we come home, I'll give you an example. We want to protect our spouses from the things that we see. We want to protect our children from the things that we see. When I was at the coroner's office, when we would have a child case come in, after we would get done doing everything that we had to do, I would call my then wife and say, "Hey, hug the girls for me." And I would almost be in tears, because, it hits to you that, you're dealing with this child case, and we mirrored, things that are the closest to us. So when I would get home, I wouldn't say anything about my day or the child case that I had, because I'm trying to protect her from it. I was trying to protect my kids from it. So it is truly And that's one thing with spouses too. I think I'm a true believer that even before you get into this field, say you get hired with the fire department, police department, or whatever, they should have like a mini academy with the spouses on what to expect when their husband or wife comes home, so they won't take the things that they're seeing in their experiencing personal.
Right. Yeah, because they can very easily internalize a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like you said, that they did something and then there's no communication.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
It's
And the
unfortunate.
yeah the other thing about balance too is that, and I tell in my lectures, I tell them this. I tell the people that I'm fortunate enough to speak to is that whatever you do, whatever discipline you go into, because I don't care what realm of or what discipline of first responder you are, we're all on the same team, right? We're all on the same team. We just play different positions. Whatever you decide to go into, whether it's law enforcement, fire, corrections, military, dispatch, whatever it is, be the very best that you can be. Be the, set your goals high. Be the very best you can be. However, don't make all of what you do your entire identity. What you do is part of your is part of your identity, sure, but don't make it your whole identity, because what happens, what I've seen is that when it comes 20, 25, 30 years and it's time for you to retire and you've made your work everything that you know, you've made it your identity. Now you're not Captain Bill at the fire department anymore, you're Bill, right?
Mhm.
And you don't even know who Bill is. So when you've left something that you've loved, you're already kind of, and in this transition of uncertainty, you're already kind of depressed. But now all of us have to have a purpose to wake up every morning, to thrive. Now you don't know, who Bill is. Now you don't have a purpose, so that can lead to your depression. When I was working at the coroner's office from the beginning of 18 to the end of 19, we had 3 police officers, 2 firefighters who had died by suicide that come in, and 3 out of 5 of those individuals had all been retired in less than a year. That's
Mhm.
why balance is so very important when we go through not only the beginning, middle, and end of our career, and also the transitional part of getting towards the end of our career. Like, have a plan on what you're going to do, have an exit plan, have a maybe not necessarily a retirement plan, but figure out kind of what you're going to do or what you want to do after you retire from, your career.
Yeah, you hit on a really good point, having a plan after, because you're not gonna be in the department forever. You're not gonna be a firefighter forever. You're not gonna be an EMS forever. You're not gonna be a police officer or corrections officer forever. At some point, you have to break away and return back to your normal civilian life.
Yep.
How do they go about doing that? There has to be some kind of resource or some kind of like debriefing of sorts for a lot of first responders to, some kind of training to kind of, break away from that side of the job into the civilian life.
It's almost like I was talking to one of my students here last week. He spent 19 years in the military, and before he got out, what he told me was actually, I think, really needs to be done in any first responder aspect, any first responder career, is that when you're getting ready to retire, either a year or 2 years have the company should have a transitional plan in place to take you from the first responder life to now basically a civilian life, right?
Hmm.
And to make you aware of what to expect, some of the things, get things set before it actually happens.
Yeah. I believe they should do something like that. I mean, I wouldn't know how to go about to, trying to help with that, but just getting the word out there maybe. I mean, you would know more about that than I would, but I would definitely would want to help, get the word out for that.
Yeah.
So,
It's so important that, we are so much bigger than our careers, but you see early on, and this is why it's so important to plant the seed now, and hopefully that seed, it may not sprout right away, But when somebody's 5 or 10 years into the career, it's like, oh yeah, that guy that came in and talked that I thought was goofy and that I didn't think he knew what he was talking about. Well, maybe actually he did know what he was talking about because he went through it. And so if we plant the seed early now, maybe there'll be a lot more first responders that have maybe a little bit more balance, than eating, breathing, sleeping their career.
So you should you're saying they should have training in the beginning of what to expect and then some sort of exit training before they retire or leave the organization
I wish that
and
when I
during.
was yeah, I wish that when I started out in my basic class, there was like 3 paragraphs, not even a whole chapter, 3 paragraphs of the well-being of the EMT. It said, sleep right, eat right, and, do fun stuff, basically in a nutshell, right? It goes a lot deeper than that because if I would have known the things that I was going to experience, maybe it could have averted the path that I chose to take. And maybe I would have asked for help a lot sooner than, going to the almost to the very end, and not getting any help at all, and this generation right now, I think is so much more, and I say this with all due respect, their feelings are more at the surface and they're more apt to talk about their feelings than we were when we were first coming up, which is a plus, which is a bonus, right? And this isn't to take away that, um, you know, we still need to be brave. We need to be strong. We need to be, vigilant on, when we're on the job. But we also have to have that balance of giving back to ourselves when we're not on the job. So
Exactly. Now, is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
I just want to say that, if you're out there, whether you're new, whether you're a seasoned veteran or whatever, you are so much more than what your career has given you. And please, if you find yourself not in such a good place, you're not the only one because there are people that came before you, people that came alongside you, people that came after you that feel exactly the way that you feel. And a battle is better fought with your peers than it is alone. And it's much more achievable by winning that battle.
Another thing I wanted to tell you was when I talked with Ramses Yabara, he's from QRF. He is looking for people to volunteer for QRF. So if you know of anybody, when I give you his information, if you know of anybody that wants to volunteer for peer support, or if you know of any therapists that want to volunteer time, they're willing to accept any kind of volunteer work or start chapters all over the country.
Sure.
That's sure that they can get. They want to branch out. They want to reach the entire country. So that way, when somebody pushes the button on the app, and asks for help, somebody will be there to help.
And that's so vitally important. And, sometimes it's easier to talk to a total stranger than it is to talk to people and a
Mhm.
total stranger that's been through what you've gone through. Because sometimes somebody else's perspective is a little bit better than yours, especially if you're in a dark place. Yeah, it's that type of help is very invaluable to what we're going through.
Exactly. And a lot of these individuals who are peer support are veterans and first responders. The therapists, not so much. They're not first responders, but they are trauma informed because they go through the universities and stuff like that that volunteer their time to help. But a lot of the individuals, a lot of the men and women who respond with the peer support group are first responders and former veterans. So
That's
there'd be a
great.
lot of help there.
And I think, if you are a first responder and we're all worried, another reason that keeps us from asking for help is that we're afraid of judgment. We're afraid of labeling, right? And I have this saying, that I tell the people that I speak to is that just remember this one thing is that those who judge don't matter, and those who matter don't judge. And because you matter more than their opinion or their judgment, your welfare matters more than that. And you deserve more than that with everything that you've sacrificed, both physically and mentally. You are worth that.
Amen to that. That's all I have for you today. Is there anything else? You have a TikTok page or anything you'd like to plug, or any kind of organization that you would like to
So
shout out?
thank you for asking, and thank you very much for your time today, because it takes, maybe somebody will see this and maybe it'll help them. Even if we help one person through this podcast, through this interview, then we've done what we've needed to do. And so I appreciate you having this platform. So I have my webpage is crushthestigma.com. Also on TikTok, Medic Mike Las Vegas. You can be found there. If you want to know more and see some of the things that I post about, there's there's some videos in there that may resonate with you and may hit home with you.
Okay. That's pretty awesome. So hopefully everybody will look out for your page on TikTok and hit you up on your website and reach out for help if they need it.
Yeah. It's such important work. We do such important work for the general public. It's people like yourself and so many others that are taking care of those who take care of other people.
Right. And that's one of the things that we realize is that, our first responders are out there to take care of us. They're there for us when we need them the most, when we are at our most dire need, the worst possible time in our lives, they're there. Who's there for them? It is time
Correct.
for us to stand up and be there for them in whichever way that we can.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's beautiful. That's perfectly said. Absolutely.
But that's all I have for you today. I really appreciate you and thank you so much for coming on and interviewing with us. You see or hear from Andrea. Tell her we said hi.
I'll
Tell
give her
her
a big
Rico.
shout out. I'm going to be talking to her a little later on today. She has to help me
Yeah.
with some technical stuff because I'm still new to TikTok and I'm trying to get my stuff going. And it's like, how do I do this? So I'll be talking to her today.
Tell her she owes me an interview.
Okay. Will do.
All righty. I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you so much. And I will make sure that my wife emails you the information about QRF and also killingthehero.org.
Okay. I appreciate that.
Give you some
And
names.
thanks again for this opportunity. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure, and it is an honor for us to do this for all of our first responders and veterans.
Yep. I agree. Thank you.
Have a wonderful night, and it was a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
See ya.
All right.
Thank you for joining us on 8158 Stories of Sacrifice. Every story we share is a tribute to the courage and resilience of first responders and their families. If this episode impacted, encouraged, or inspired you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who supports first responders. Follow us on all social media platforms at 8158 Podcast for updates. 8158 Stories of Sacrifice is a team effort. Rico brings the stories to life through casting, writing, original music, and editing. Brianne Shipley as production manager, handling booking, social media, graphics, promotion, marketing, website management, and logo design. Please visit our website at 8158podcast.com. For questions, collaborations, or to share your story, our email address is contactus@8158podcast.com. Until next time, let's continue to honor the legacies and remember the sacrifices of those who served, every brave man and woman on the front lines, protecting and defending us all. This is Rico signing off and honoring 8158.